Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone who were well. Peace and mercy to the Tazadak I came out there that's laboring his truth with all sincerity. I'm the brother Demayim. I'm back at it again, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. I'm going to do a quick lesson through the spirit. It's funny because this lesson that I'm doing right now, I did it last week, but every time I did it, I tried to do the video, it just kept getting cut off. People were calling me, things of those frequencies. So, it's all, and it's all, Satan, because after that, it disrupts your momentum. So right now, through the spirit, it's going to be a quick lesson. All right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. So let me jump right into it. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 7, verse 25. So it reads, "Since the day that your fathers came forth out of the land of Egypt unto this day, I have even sent unto all my servants the prophets." All right, so it shows you that the Lord's servants are the prophets. Okay, first and foremost. So now when you read Isaiah the 65th chapter, when it goes into, the Lord's servants shall eat, all right, it is beginning with the prophets, all right, and on down unto the people who believe, who follow the righteous acts to the best of their ability. But the Lord's servants are his prophets. So it says, daily rising up early and sending them. So the Lord even, all right, in the time of Egypt, in the time of Jeremiah, the Lord always sent, throughout secular history, the Lord has always sent prophets to prophesy. Okay, you see a great example, Moses, he prophesied what? Against Egypt. You have Jeremiah, who I'm reading out of, he prophesied against Babylon. All right. Daniel prophesied against Babylon. Okay, so the Lord has always sent his prophets out, all right, to prophesy about, a kingdom, the downfall of a kingdom. Okay. So it says, and you find your prophets, out there on the highways and hedges teaching the word. That's where you find the Lord's prophets. Matter of fact, let me get Proverbs, the first chapter. Okay. So this is Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20. It says, "Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets." All right, and the wisdom is talking about what? The wisdom of these holy scriptures. Because Paul, as Paul quoted, he said, "The wisdom of this world is foolishness to the Most High." So the true wisdom goes back to these scriptures. Okay, which, this wisdom is going to keep us stable in the times of tribulation. Okay. These having the wisdom and understanding of the scriptures is a part of having that armor, okay, which is going to shield us, okay, because we know what's going on, it keeps us aware of what's going on, it keeps us on point. All right, when you go into the word wisdom, it goes into when you break it down, when you go into the word wisdom, it goes back to wise. And when you break down the word wise in the Latin, it means to see. Okay, so the Lord is allowing us to see what's going on, what's going to happen in the latter times. Okay, so it says, "Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets." So she uttereth her voice in the streets by who? The prophets, the Lord's servants, who the Lord set up to go out there to teach and prophesy. All right, first and foremost, the prophets are teaching and prophesying, all right, to the elect, to the people, to first repent from their wicked ways, all right, to turn back from, their evil ways and turn to the Lord, all right, because the Lord is coming with great judgment. He's coming with great wrath, all right, so we're warning the people. The prophets are warning the people, all right, just like in secular history, in ancient times, you had prophets warning the people of Israel, the southern kingdom. All right, you had Habakkuk, Jeremiah, Isaiah warning the people to, to turn away from their idols and, to turn back to the Lord. All right, because the Lord was coming with great judgment. And even in those times, the Lord judged the children of Israel, beginning with the northern kingdom. All right, he had Assyria take them down. All right, going to the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, who the Lord had the Babylonian Empire take over them. And then fast forward, you had the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, all right, always oppressing the children of Israel. Okay, so it says, she crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates in the city, she uttered her words. All right, saying, we're going to stop right here, but she crieth in the chief place of concourse. All right, you know, in busy cities, and you know, in traffic. All right, where people are walking, cars are driving by, places of business. All right, that's where the prophets are going to be at. Okay, teaching and crying aloud and sparing not. Matter of fact, we could get that real quick. All right, and this is all through the Spirit. I didn't write no precepts down, so we're gonna get Isaiah. Was that 49? Let me see. Cry. I think it's Isaiah 58. Yep. This is Isaiah chapter 58, verse 1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up the voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sin. So that's what the prophets are doing. First and foremost, like I said, they're crying out loud and sparing not no one's feelings. They're lifting up their voice, just like how Yahweh Shah, the scriptures speak about how Yahweh Shah, his voice was a sound of many waters. All right, we come in the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. Okay, so we going out there speaking boldly. The scriptures speak about how the righteous speak boldly. Okay, and we're showing the peoples their transgressions. All right, because what is sin? Sin is the transgression of the Lord. We're telling our people to stop committing adultery, stop worshiping pagan holidays, stop worshiping idols, devils. Okay, stop eating shrimp, crab, lobster, and pork. All right, stop being wicked. All right, so this is what the prophets are, crying out to the people to do. All right, as well as warn them and prophesy unto them the downfall of America, warning of the prophecies that's coming, such as Jacob's trouble. All right, World War III, and ultimately the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip. Okay, so going back to Jeremiah, the 7th chapter. All right, so it says, verse 26, yet they hearken not unto me, nor incline their ear, but harden their neck. They did worse than their fathers. Yeah, because Israel, they don't hearken to the words of the prophets, so they're really rejecting the Lord. Going back to Proverbs, the 1st chapter, when it goes into how long are you simple ones going to be simple, and how long are you scoffers going to scoff? Because that's the spirit of the 2/3, ultimately, because the elect this truth is only for the elect. The elect is the only ones that's going to grasp unto this word. Okay? And follow the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. But the 2/3, they don't hearken unto the Lord's word. All right? In fact, they actually harden their hearts, their necks. They're stiff-necked. They don't consider. The scriptures speak about how Israel don't consider. All right? They're very ignorant. That's why when you read the book of Hosea, the 4th chapter, it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Okay? They despise this word. They despise righteousness. They're wise to do evil. To do good, they don't know. All right? These are the Lord's people, and this is nothing new under the sun. All right? Those same spirits that Jeremiah is, in the time of Jeremiah, all right, is the same spirits back again today. All right? Those same rebellious spirits. Okay? That's why this time around the Lord has chosen a remnant and the elect. All right? So it says, I'm going to read it again, Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 26. It says, yet they hearken not unto me, nor incline their ear, but harden their neck. They did worse than their fathers. That's exactly what they did. Look right now in today's society, you have men turning into women. You have women turning into men. All right? You have a community called LGBT. You know, we're not going to get too deep into it, but that wasn't really going on back then. Yeah, it was always sodomy, homosexuality, but now they intensified it 10 times more. You have, our own people, molesting children at a high level, all into types of different orgies and just sacrificing into, these witches and warlocks to gain wealth, even though that was happening in ancient times, but it's far worse now. It's far worse now. They're not ashamed. They do it openly. Okay? And you have a lot of, people follow behind these leaders and, these people in the world, man. It says, verse 27, therefore thou shalt speak all these words unto them, but they will not hearken to thee. So you're going to speak all these words, but they're not going to hearken unto the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. All right, and it's prophesied. Let's go to Romans, the 11th chapter. Okay, so this is Romans chapter 11, verse 7. What then Israel have not obtained that which he seeketh for? All right, because what is Israel seeking for? They're seeking for the truth. Okay, it says, but the election have obtained it. So only the elect were the ones that were able to obtain this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Only the elect were gifted faith, because the scriptures, when you read the book of Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, it says that faith is a gift. So the elect has a gift of faith. Remember, when Yahushua returns to the earth, it reads that, he's looking for those who have faith. All right. So it's a gift, because 2/3 don't have faith. That's why the scriptures, when you read 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, says the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness, because the Lord didn't give the 2/3 the gift of faith. Okay, because if you have faith, you will follow the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua to the best of your ability. All right. It says, but the election have attained it, and the rest were blinded. So the rest were blinded. The Lord have spiritually blinded the 2/3 of the nation of Israel. All right, which is you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. That's the reason why you can't have, you have people saying that the Bible is a contradiction. It's the reason why they don't understand the scriptures. They can't understand it, because the Lord have sent angels to blind them. All right, to block their ears spiritually, and to block their discernment. All right, of the scriptures, block their understanding of the scriptures. So everything, if you have faith and you believe, don't take advantage. Don't think this is not a true gift. Having this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and having faith and fear of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua is a true gift and blessing. All right. It says, as it is written, the Most High have given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they shall not see, and ears that they shall not hear unto this day. So the Lord have given them the spirit of slumber. All right. So they're spiritually blinded, and they spiritually can't hear. They can't understand these scriptures, man. They can't even, the Lord blinded them from even knowing what's going on in the world. Not being watching for the prophecies, not being occupied in prophecies, not watching the news. They watching social media. They're just distracted by the bread and circuses. But the Lord has set angels for them to be distracted. So when the times of tribulation comes, because look, the prophets got the blood off their hands. The prophets is the ones that's pushing this word daily, weekly. Brothers is doing lessons. Brothers is going teaching at camp. It's all through the YouTube platforms. Different platforms like Odyssey. The word is out there. All right. So the Lord is not going to be a cloak for your sin, because the Lord has sent his servants out there, his prophets out there to prophesy and warn you, but you have rejected the knowledge. So therefore, the Lord is going to reject those who don't have faith. Okay. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Lord willing is edifying. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. Shalom.